So the payments landscape has undergone a profound transformation over the past decade, with digital wallets and virtual cards, emerging as pivotal forces. Um, Indeed, a decade of relentless innovation, largely driven by fintech advancements and widespread adoption of smartphones, has fundamentally reshaped the consumer payment habits. Digital payments, once deemed, quote, alternative, now dominate online transactions and are rapidly gaining at the physical point of sale.
Hmm.
This all according to a new report from UPay. That's a payments and loyalty app that's based in the UK, but it claims global presence. So here's a few high level points. Digital wallet spending grew nearly tenfold over the space of a decade,
Hmm.
from 1.6 trillion in 2014 to 15.7 trillion in 2024,
Wow.
right? And it's projected to double again by 2030 to exceed $28 trillion,
Hmm.
which, to put that in perspective, exceeds the United States GDP in 2023.
Hmm. Wow.
That's pretty incredible. So, virtual cards, meanwhile, are gaining traction among both businesses and individuals,
Hmm.
consumers, due to their enhanced security features and the ability to streamline expense management,
Right.
especially for online transactions, in the B2B sphere.
Right.
Virtual cards are expected to total $5.4 trillion this year and to nearly triple by 2030 when they're forecast to reach $14.3 trillion dollars.
Hmm. Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Those are some big numbers.
Those are really numbers to be reckoned with,
Yeah.
Um
Hmm.
a- and I know you and I we've talked about virtual cards a lot
Yep.
lately,
Yep.
I mean, it's definitely a perfect opportunity for the B2B sphere, but it also has consumer implications,
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
So,
I think people are you're always kind of concerned. You got your card. We've all had those experiences where the card gets compromised
right,
or stolen or whatever, and then you're like, okay, I now have to go to all of my subscriptions and redo all my cards. And so
right,
those virtual cards are great. Like at our company, we've talked about it before, but for our business, we do virtual cards for each of our major vendors. And so if one of those cards gets compromised, we just have to go back and update that one payment method for that one vendor. We're not using the same card across all of our vendors.
right, right,
And the other thing is we can put special limitations on, like you mentioned, the security. So we can say, hey, for this card, there can only be one transaction a month and it can be for no more than $500 because we know that we have a subscription that's $495 a month.
right.
So if somebody wants to go spend money, it's like, well, you can only spend one transaction and it can't be more than $500. So good luck, you know?
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, no, I mean they have so many implications. And security is probably the biggest
Yeah. Yeah.
plus sign, plus in the plus column. So,
Right. Right. Hmm.
so next up, while merchants are hot on the trails of digital wallets, buy now, pay later, and A to A and real-time payments, they appear to be dropping the ball on a frictionless final step of the purchase process, that being the one-click checkout.
Hmm.
That's a big takeaway from a new payments intelligence WorldPay report. Among global shoppers surveyed, 84% said one-click checkout is an important factor in choosing where they shop,
Hmm.
and 18% picked retailers based solely on whether that's an option that's offered.
Hmm.
Some other noteworthy data points: 99% of cross border shoppers want to use their preferred payment method, and 94% want to pay in their local currency.
Hmm.
And digital wallets account for 66% of global e commerce. Buy now, pay later has grown from 2.3. I love this stat. This just like blew my mind. Because you and I mean, when buy now, pay later first started, you know, bubbling up to the surface,
Right.
we talked about it like, oh, yeah, this is a nice opportunity,
Right.
right?
Right.
Well, it's grown from a $2.3 billion niche to $343 billion,
Wow.
which in the space of a decade.
Mm.
I mean,
Wow.
that's incredible. I mean,
Yeah, it is.
I just can't even wrap my head around like what is that, 150 fold or something like
Mhm. Right.
that?
Right. In
You
such a short
know,
time. Yeah.
in a very short time. And it's not like it's. I mean, really, it's just a new spin on an old way of commerce. You know, I mean, it's sort of
Right.
like it's like the layaway, only you get to take it home with you. You know.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So
Mm. Very interesting stats for sure.
yeah, yeah. So I want to talk about Bitcoin for a minute.
Okay.
We've talked about that before,
Yep. Yep.
and an article that just posted in Restaurant Finance Monitor offers some interesting food for thought regarding payment acceptance. And that was I use that food for thought specifically because it was restaurants.
Yes.
Um,
Pun.
and the pun was intended. And it sort of shows you like when I do my research, I really dive into some really
Yes.
obscure publications and
Right.
things,
Right.
you know. So they have this article, should a restaurant consider accepting Bitcoin? And it goes through a bunch of pros and cons. One big positive for restaurateurs, the article notes, is cost. Obviously, most crypto gateways charge about uh, 50 basis points to 150 basis points per transaction,
Right.
which is well below the 2 to 4% charged by credit card processors.
Right. And there's no chargebacks. So,
And there's no chargebacks.
right.
Of course, with restaurants, it's kind of hard to do a chargeback,
Anyway, right.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Although it's funny you say that, although it does happen. I was actually working with an agent, yesterday or 2 days ago or something. I was talking to an agent and he has a big deal. It's like a huge, restaurant, multi-location. And he asked them what their biggest annoyance was. And they actually like their point of sale system, but the chargebacks is a big deal for them because, they get a lot of them because, law of large numbers. They have a lot of, there's a lot of revenue. So people do file chargebacks at restaurants. And then when they do, they don't know what to do about it, because it's like, well, here's the receipt, but what are we, so how is this to prove that we gave them the food? You know what I mean? It's like they
Right,
ate it.
right, exactly. You have the
It's
cameras
funny.
going in the
Yeah,
restaurant or something, right?
right. And it's like, are you really gonna pull that every time somebody does a, $80 chargeback? It's like, so anyway, yeah. So but they do get those chargebacks. It's crazy.
Yeah, yeah, but it's interesting. Well, a potential headache, on the other hand, are the tax implications, and we haven't really talked a lot about that. But the IRS requires a merchant to reflect the fair value of the cryptocurrency on the day it was received in its gross income.
Mm.
Then, when the digital currency is sold, the transaction is subject to capital gains taxes.
Right. Well, and remember, we discussed on so two things I want to say about that. Number one is they could avoid that altogether if they worked with one of these places that'll charge 100 to 150 basis points because they'll do an instant conversion to fiat, which means
Right,
the
right,
restaurant actually never even owned crypto. It,
exactly.
it it was paid through this other intermediary that converted it to fiat. So if they do that, they wouldn't have to worry about it at all. The other thing is, remember that there is the now I'm checking myself here. Was this law passed or I can't remember was it a executive order, but that thing that Trump was talking about where they can spend up to a certain amount of money on a transaction and it would not be considered capital gains on either side.
Right. That was an
So
executive order that I think has not actually been put out yet, but has been sort of talked about.
talked about. Right. So if that
Yeah.
if that were to come out, that would potentially solve this
That
problem.
would solve this problem completely. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
You know, um, and then I want to put all this into perspective because according to the Fed, in 2023, which is the most recent year for which it has data, just 1% of Americans paid for purchases using cryptocurrencies.
Right.
And about 28% of adult Americans, or 65 million Americans, own cryptocurrency.
Hmm.
So
Wait, what was that number again? Was it, did you say 5%? Was it?
28% of U.S. adults,
Oh, wow.
okay,
Okay.
which is 65 million people.
So 28% of that's so interesting. That really does speak to the problem right now with crypto, right? Because it's like 28% have bought it, 1% have used it to buy something.
Right.
So right now it's really just this kind of asset for retained value. It's not a means of currency exchange. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's that's going to
Hmm.
be the case for a while. I mean,
Well, until some of these impediments. I mean, we're still, I think, aren't we still a month or two away from Square allowing all their merchants to do crypto,
yeah, yeah, I
right?
think it's October.
So all and it's like I was funny. I was talking to so a friend of mine owns a like a ice cream truck, and
Uh-huh.
he uses Square, much to my chagrin. Um, and I'll get him over to full stack payments here soon. So, but anyways, but so he uses Square, and I came up there and we were just talking about payments, and he jokingly said, are you going to pay for this with crypto today, James? Or because he knows I'm a payments guy. And
Right,
I was like, hey, don't laugh about that. I was like, I will be back in a few months and I will pay with crypto because you have Square and you're going to be able to accept crypto whether you like it or not.
right.
And it'll instantly convert if you want, but it will be set up on there. And he's like, what? So, he thought that was really cool. And so I do think I think when that starts happening, and then if this law passes or the executive order comes out or whatever to reduce the threshold for capital gains tax tracking, I think that could make a big difference.
Oh, I think it could. I mean, I would love to pay for, I mean, well, where I am, I don't get ice cream trucks, but like,
Yeah, yeah.
when I uh go down to the city and go to a club or or like a restaurant where I have several friends that are in bands, so I go and watch them
Right, right.
play. And a lot of these places, especially like the brew houses and so forth,
Hmm.
they don't serve food, but they have food trucks all around.
Yeah, yeah.
And it always cracks me up because depending on I was at this one place one time. It was a winery, and they had food trucks, and I saw this guy with his phone going trying to trying to find a signal, like.
Right, right. Yes, that's funny.
And finally I was like, can I just pay with cash, please?
Right, right,
Like, I really want to get my taco. I mean,
right, right. That's funny. Yep.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, but yeah, I think that I think that by and large, most of the people I know with crypto are holding it as an investment.
Right,
Spending
right,
it is like, it's kind of a novelty. They might do it once or twice just to see how it
right,
works,
right.
but
But you
yeah.
do you do have to think though that and it's funny because one of the things I love about making content over a long period of time is being able to track my own evolution on
Uh-huh.
ideas. And I mean,
Right?
3 years ago I was like this. A year ago I was like, I don't know, crypto acceptance. I don't know, what's the point?
Right.
I'm starting to see that there is this pent up demand for commerce. I mean, there's billions and billions of dollars held by U.S. consumers in Bitcoin,
Right.
and again, if a few this is one area where the government can have such a huge impact on the way that commerce works in a country because if a country goes all in on crypto, Brazil is an example of that, but
Right.
in the US market, if we're going to do that and we're actually going to lower the threshold for tax tracking, allow it to be used like a currency, we're going to lower regulation and allow these things to, I mean, there is a lot of pent up demand. I think a lot of those 65 million people, I think if they went down, then they've all got the app on their phone, to access their crypto, right? Just because that's
Right.
what you do
Right.
when you have crypto. I mean, if they go down and they start everywhere they go, it's like, oh wow, all we got to do is tap our phone here. We can pay with crypto. I think they're going to think that's pretty cool, and I think they're going to want to
I
do it. You
I
know,
I see that like in the next year or two.
maybe even 5 years. Like it might, you know what I mean? It might take
Yeah,
a little
but
while to
I see
build.
it happening at some point.
Yeah,
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 agreed.
I do too.
Especially with younger people. I mean, a lot of the people I know who are holding crypto and want to spend it are in their 20s and 30s.
Right, right. Yep, absolutely.
You
Yeah,
know,
and I
so
think at some point they're going to be like, okay, and again, we talked about it before, but this thing of like allowing them to spend this money tax free, of like they bought crypto and 10 years later it's worth seven
right,
times what they paid for it.
right,
They have a huge capital gains tax implication there. If they
right.
can decide, you know what, for the next year, our family's just going to use crypto to buy everything,
Mm-hmm.
and we're not going to pay any tax
Avoid all the
on
taxes.
that
Yeah,
capital gains, that's a pretty big financial incentive to go out there and use your crypto, especially with inflation and everything else. So I don't know.
yeah,
I'm starting to see the rationale for it. I don't think it's an urgent rationale, but I think it's coming.
yeah. No, I agree. I think it's coming too. So So finally, we talk a lot about, and we haven't just now, talk a lot about digital wallets and virtual cards and
Yep.
cryptocurrencies and other newbie payment methods. But, let's not forget about the old tried and true stuff.
Yeah.
I wanted to, like, for example, the ACH.
Yep.
ACH payment volume grew by 5.5% on a daily average basis during the first half of this year, according to
Mm.
Nacha, which keeps tabs on the ACH.
Right. Right.
It was used to process 17.25 billion payments from January 1 to June 30th.
Mm.
$45 trillion dollars in payments during the first half of the year, which was a 6.8% increase over the same 6 month period last year.
Mm.
Now, factors driving ACH growth include, of course, same day ACH,
Mm-hmm.
which we've talked about before.
Right.
It charted year over year volume growth of 15%. That's
Right.
pretty significant. B2B payments, which grew about 10%. And consumer payments, which grew 6%, which might not be as, great as same day ACH, but, you know, by and large, the ACH in the past was a business
Right. Right.
mechanism, not a consumer mechanism.
Right.
The consumer payments include things like bill payments, recurring payments like
Right.
recurring bill payments and donations, subscription services, and account to account transactions, like funding your digital wallet, right?
Right. Right.
So, I think going forward, we're going to see even more transactions traverse the ACH now that the government has eliminated check issuance.
Right.
Because the
Right.
government historically has been probably the largest single user of the ACH.
Right.
Benefits, Social Security, Medicare, all those kind of things are sent through the ACH.
Right.
Now that, or check,
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
but it's interesting. I read the other day that this government mandate about doing away with checks has a few drawbacks, and one of them is I think it was like the uh, the Amish, which don't believe in modern
Yeah.
day
Right.
thing, and I didn't realize that a lot of them don't have bank accounts.
So how do they get their Social Security or whatever through the AC? Well,
Yeah,
wait, do they even I didn't think that they even contributed to
I don't think they would
Social
contribute
Security
to
and
Social
all that.
Security, but there would have to be some sort of like the tax
Well,
payments,
that's right. They're still going to pay taxes, potentially get tax refunds. So that's
right?
where I see. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
Huh.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one. I don't know quite how that's gonna happen,
Right,
but
right.
yeah.
If we
So
end up with an Amish person on our podcast to talk about this, that is going to be a very interesting interview.
it'd be interesting, right? I had a
Uh,
uh, it just reminded me. I have this apartment, and the dryer died the other day, a couple weeks ago. So
yeah.
I go on, Marketplace. I go on Marketplace and I see this dryer. It's a good deal, and we have a lot of Mennonites around our area, and the Mennonites are sort of like the liberals of the
Yes.
Amish,
Yes.
you know. Um, and so I get this, the guy's like, okay, sure, here's the dryer, and this is what I want, and can you pay in cash? I'm like,
Right.
sure, I don't mind,
Right. Right.
and I get there, and it's like this really young Mennonite family. It's like, oh, now I know why you want to cash.
Right, right, right. Yeah, it's funny. Well, one of my best childhood friends actually, his dad grew up Amish, and so they came out of that. And even my wife Christine on her side of the family, they go back to some Mennonite roots just like one generation ago. So we're very familiar with that world.
Yeah, yeah. It's
And
and around here, I have this one place that I go to for my yard tools, my
yeah, yeah,
chainsaws and so forth.
right.
And I have to it's a good hunk away. It's a good 40-minute drive. And I
Yeah,
pass a lot of other places, but it's this Mennonite family that runs this place,
yeah.
and they treat me with such respect,
Oh yeah, it's amazing.
you
Yeah, they
know?
have great business people. They've done very, very well, from in a
Yeah,
way. I actually
yeah.
did credit card processing for a lot of the Mennonite community back in the day, and
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
yeah, that
Yeah,
was
and
one of
they,
my.
they're one day he asked me, he's like, you come all the way over here, from where you live. Why do you come all the way here? I'm like,
Yeah.
because you're the only people that don't talk down to me. But
Yeah.
women buying chainsaws, it's not exactly God. You know?
That is true, Patty. You probably do look a little suspect walking out of Home Depot with a chainsaw. You know what I mean?
Right? Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
funny.
So
Well, good stuff,
anyway, well,
Patty.
that's it for this week, James.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much as always for the research. Always enjoy having these chats with you. Thanks, Patty.
Thank you.